Welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce DeTorres, and with me is Amanda Bell, running for Congress as a Democrat in Wisconsin's 6th District. Her website is Amanda Bell for Congress, the word for Congress.org. Amanda Bell for Congress.org. Before I read a little bit more about you, Amanda, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking, Bruce.
Oh, my pleasure. From your website, Amanda was raised on a farm, worked in local factories. Then, for 25 years, she was with the U.S. Geological Survey, leading teams that studied and protected our nation's most vital natural resources. And I phrased it rising to deputy director. Did you start as the deputy director?
I did not. I
Okay.
did not. I rose to the
Okay.
occasion.
I wanted to check that, but here we go. And finally, Amanda believes real leadership means listening first, not to party leaders or political donors, but to the people you represent. So, as you
Yes.
know, the first half is going to be all about you and your campaign, your district, why you're running. And then we'll
Yes.
discuss those small business issues that are near and dear to the heart of my organization. So, how do you start teaching me and everyone watching and listening, Amanda, you and why you're running and things like that?
Yes. Thank you, Bruce. Um, I think the most important thing, if I can frame it as my understanding on why we need better representation, is right now we don't have people that are in the elected positions that are listening to the voters. As you mentioned, I worked for the U.S. Geological Survey for 25 years. My whole career has been about public servants. My love and passion when my heart sings is when I'm helping others. And I believe that we should have elected officials that truly feel that way rather than just trying to get ahead. Growing up on a small dairy farm in rural Wisconsin, my parents taught me really early to make sure that I put in a hard day's work and that I am able to, at the end of the day, say, I accomplished something. The other part of that, being in a rural community, was all about making sure your neighbors were okay. If we had somebody that was injured or there was a neighbor whose house burnt down, we all got together to make sure that they had the resources that they needed to be able to get through and get back up on their feet. And that's the heart of what I think America and hometown, rural, or even urban individuals are looking for. They're not looking for the people that are out to say, I got mine, you don't get yours. They're looking for the people that are saying, I worked really hard to get where I am, and I want to help you get here too. And if we can make sure that all of our elected politicians have that mindset, I think we'll be in a much better place. Um, One of the big parts of my life has always been looking at the environment and making sure that we're being good stewards of the land and water resources that we have. If we don't have clean air, if we don't have clean water, we literally don't survive. And I've had the incredible, fortunate experiences to see our nation's water from coast to coast. I've sampled from Washington to New York and from Florida to California, with most of my sampling and experience being in Wisconsin. But our natural resources are vital to our economy, they're vital to literally our lives. So that is one thing that is so near and dear to my heart. Secondly, is making sure that we have a really great education system in America. I am now serving as a substitute teacher in several rural school districts in Wisconsin, and I'm noticing the discrepancies that are between the schools. We need to make sure that at the federal level, we are supporting and encouraging public schools and making sure that that opportunity is available for everyone so that we continue to have the next generation have that foundational knowledge and education to continue to be the leaders that we are. Um, Another thing that I've been hearing a lot from people, and it's probably the biggest thing that comes out in conversations when I'm asking people what their issues are, is really helping to make sure we have a good economy. And this is where I think the Small Business Administration and the American Small Business League comes into play so much. We have over half of our population works for businesses that are less than 500 people. Those small businesses are so vital to making sure that our country lives. Like we need those jobs, we need those small businesses so that people can feed their families, so they can get healthcare, so they can get housing, they can pay their rent and pay their mortgage. Because if we don't have good paying jobs, especially at the small business level, then people can't feed their families. It's literally helping people to survive. Um, Cost of healthcare is increasing, cost of groceries are increasing, and everything's getting more expensive. And making sure we have those good paying jobs is so vital. Lastly, the thing that I'm really focused on is making sure that I'm listening. As you mentioned, one of the key foundations of my campaign is making sure I'm going out and talking to people. Oftentimes, elected officials never stop talking. Um, and I think it's time that politicians just be quiet and listen to what people are struggling with. I'm not one to walk into the room and say, I know what you need. I would much rather walk into a room and say, how can I help you? What are your needs? And how can we work together to make sure those needs are addressed? One thing I've learned working with the USGS, I've worked with many different agencies, state, local, federal, and then tribal and international agencies as well. And the thing that I've come to realize and recognize is that if I come to the table with solutions to problems they don't have, it never goes well. But if I come with a heart of curiosity, a heart of wanting to understand and listening to them, we get a lot more accomplished and we end up in a much better place. So those are kind of the foundations of my campaign, really focusing on the kitchen table items that people are worried about. So, and that's what really got me into wanting to run. I worked for the USGS when the current administration came in. Things changed very quickly for federal employees. And I decided that the direction that it was heading was not a direction that I wanted to participate in. So I took the deferred resignation program and I left the federal government. And I'll admit, after 25 years of working as a hydrologist and an ecologist, and then the deputy director over my 3-state office, um, I mean, I was in a very nice position. I was overseeing three different states. I was in charge of 13 facilities, 120 vehicle fleet. I was on the management team of a $33 million federal agency. I could have been perfectly content continuing on and going into retirement in 12 years and just not worrying about it, keeping my head down. But I couldn't stand back. I couldn't not say something. So when I took the deferred resignation as of October 1st, I was no longer a federal employee, and I declared my candidacy because I want to make sure that people are represented. And then I began substitute teaching, and it's been incredible being in the community and making sure that I'm listening and hearing even from the students that I'm teaching. So, yeah.
The decision to leave and become a candidate, um, if indulge me, describe that thought process. I'm intrigued, like how you went from that to that.
So I'll admit a lot of it came from when Doge came in and started doing sweeping cuts. Um, I know how hard it is for somebody to get a good federal job. From the inside of the federal government, it's at least a 2-year process from the time that a supervisor says, I want to hire someone, to the time that the person actually gets their first day on the job. It's a 2-year process.
Hmm.
And on the outside of somebody coming in, it's at least a 9-month process from the time that they apply and interview and get through all the background checks to the first day. It's at least 9 months. And for DOGE to come in and say all of the people who started in the last year, you're fired. That was personal, because I was the one that was working with these new employees. I was the one helping onboard them, train them, work with them. And knowing how hard it is to get to that point of somebody being hired, it's just heartbreaking. One example I have is we hired a woman to help us in the administration department. We're for 230 employees, we have 3 people that work in our as administrative assistants. So it's a heavy lift doing all the credit cards, all the travel, all of the personnel and timekeeping, all of those things. So for 3 people to do 230 employees, it's a big lift.
Mm-hmm.
So we had hired her. She moved from Nevada to Minneapolis, and in that, she left a really great paying job. She was incredible. She helped run a veterans home in Nevada, and she moved to an entry level job within the federal government. And then 6 months later, she was fired for no reason. She was a rock star. She was amazing. And our hands were tied because that's what DOGE told us to do. And it was heartbreaking.
I can, I
Um,
and from that heartbreak, the decision, like, okay, I could spend the next well, you could spend the next 4 years under this administration that out of the gate is rubbing you the wrong way.
yep,
Was that insurmountable, just the prospect of the 4 years under this administration?
it was. It was. Again, my whole career, I have set out to serve people. And I mean, if they would have asked me, I could have given them a list of 15 different ways to fix things and make things more efficient, like that. Like, we could have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars across the government by implementing a few things. But they didn't ask us. I actually feel like it was somebody walked up to a car and said, I don't like circles. Take all the circles out of this car. So you're saying take the wheels and the steering wheel and the belts and the pulleys and the buttons and the lights, and there, we don't have any more circles. Make it run. It doesn't work that way, right? So they were using that as proof that the government is broken. When if they would have asked the driver, if they would have asked the mechanic,
Yeah.
we could have said, hey, one way to make this more efficient would be X, Y, and Z. But the callousness of the way that it was implemented is what I couldn't stand for. And I couldn't, my morals and my values of helping and serving people, it that's what made it be insurmountable.
How and when did the idea of uh, becoming a candidate, were you frustrated thinking like, I gotta go? And did the idea of becoming a candidate, open the door for your plan to leave and become a candidate?
Um, I would say it almost happened serendipitously together. Uh, it was one of those where, in a time of hopelessness, because that's really how it felt, it was hopeless. Um, the only way to get out of the dark is to go towards the light, right? So I figured the only way to help was to stand up and lead. And as federal employees, there's not a lot of opportunity we have to actually stand up and say what things are going on. Um, so it was one of those where I decided I could no longer work for the administration, and in that, I saw my representatives not doing anything about it, not stopping the chaos that was ensuing, and I was like, this can't go on. We need to stop this. So that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to put my plans in place so that when I am no longer a federal employee, Because I took ethics training multiple times every year, and I know what the Hatch Act says. So I knew I had to wait until I wasn't a federal employee to be able to stand up and declare my election or
And
declare
what
my candidacy.
and was it your reflections on your representative that
Oh,
that
yes.
inspired you? Before that, had you given any thought to a career in office like that?
I hadn't. And I think it was mostly because I really had intended on working for the survey for the remainder of my career. Um,
Okay.
I loved my job. I loved it. I love the people I worked with. I it was truly a community of people that cared about the water and cared about, serving the American public. So I
When you
hadn't thought about it.
Thank you. Now, at that time, did you consider yourself more than average aware of the wants, needs, and identity in your district? Or did you get excited to, my gosh, here's a whole field of study I get to master. I get to become an expert on my district every day as much as possible, as fast as possible. What was your thought process?
Well, I think the unique perspective I have of growing up on a dairy farm is one of those that we have not had in our representation. So I think using that was a really good catalyst. I had not had a lot, I hadn't done a lot of research on what the needs are of the district, but as a researcher, as a scientist, I was like, all right, new field of study, let's do this. So it's been very exciting to dive into that. Again, my perspective on rural communities and now on education being, I just this week finished up teaching for an agricultural class and helping with the FFA group. So seeing the juxtaposition of the federal workforce to the rural communities that really dot all over the 6th district has been a really great opportunity for me to learn. And it gives me a foot in the door for a lot of communities that would previously not have been trusting of somebody that's coming in as a politician. So,
True, but it sounds like you had a gut identification with the people of your district. You knew your district from having lived there and coming
yeah.
up in a family that's kind of typical of your district. So there was never this, no, no, no. It's just you just have to master the details and then
Yes.
and convince the people of your experience and your abilities. And
Yes.
how's it going so far? Do you face a primary? What kind of competition do you have?
Yes. So I am running as a Democrat. There are 4 other gentlemen that are also running on the Democratic ticket. There is an independent also running, and somebody has declared against the Republican incumbent, but they haven't been doing any campaigning. Um, the competition, I mean, I've met all of the Democrats that are running. We all get along. We're at all the same events. Each of us again bring a very unique perspective. I am the only woman candidate running there that is actively campaigning. I am the only person that has the agricultural background where I grew up on the farm and I know that rural community. I'm the only one that has any federal experience, especially federal leadership. And I'm the only candidate that is actively working in education and understands the struggles that the current education system, especially in Wisconsin, is facing. To like summarize and put my resume out there, I've led large federal sampling events. We One cool thing that we did when I was the National Water Quality Ecological Sampling Coordinator was I had the opportunity. We had to sample 500 streams, and we had 100 streams per year, and we had to do it in 2 weeks.
Oh, great.
So I did all the logistics to make sure that those streams were sampled. We had water quality and sediment, fish, invertebrates, and algae all sampled in 100 streams in 2 weeks. And that was an undertaking, but I really enjoyed doing all the logistics and planning to make sure that was able to be accomplished. So
How would you describe your relationships with quote unquote individual people or institutions in your district?
So one of the big pieces of our district is manufacturing. The Wisconsin 6th district has the most per capita manufacturing in the country for a congressional district. Um, One of the yeah, right. That's we have. I believe it's 60% of the employment in the district is manufacturing jobs. It is an impressive amount of manufacturing. And one of the jobs that I had right out of high school was working at one of those manufacturing facilities in Sheboygan, and it made me understand what good business is, because the company that I worked for was actually Bemis Manufacturing. They were great. They worked with their employees. They paid their employees well. They give them great benefits. Um, they're unionized. They make sure that everyone's taken care of. And it really is, you see how good corporations can run and good corporations can take care of their employees. Um, but working back into that, my relationships, I've worked with a lot of different groups, especially environmental and agricultural groups. And then part of the kind of the uniqueness of being a federal employee is I've worked with a lot of the local governments that have either water quality issues or water quality concerns, that they work with the USGS on. And I'm getting to know more groups as every day goes by. So
And what do you tell your district in general in terms of the top things you want to tackle and the reasons they should be hopeful?
well, interestingly, one of the big things that's going on in the 6th district right now is we have two active AI data centers being built, two hyperscale data centers being built. And both of those were done behind closed doors without any public input. And that is causing a big concern for several of our cities in the district. We go from the Wisconsin River in the center of the state to Lake Michigan. So water resources run real deep in this district. And there's concerns that the corporations that are coming in, Meta and Vantage, are coming here only to use our resources without contributing to the community. So one of the things that I've been getting very involved with is like I'm working with some local landowners that have water quality concerns that are already seeing water quality issues even during construction. Like the plants or the data centers haven't even been open and they're already seeing huge concerns with water quality. And I want to be the voice that they have, even though it's more of a localized thing. This is something that should have been dealt with at a federal level 5 years ago.
Hmm.
But that's the best time to do it would have been 5 years ago. The next best time is right now. So let's make sure that we're dealing with that. Other ways that I'm working with communities is making sure that I'm attending events and getting to know people where they're at.
Mhm.
Yeah, just attending school basketball games and football games and soccer games to make sure that I'm talking to parents and voters across the district. So
Who is a mentor to you? Whose successful political campaign or campaigns are you studying?
I really admire Tammy Baldwin. Uh, in Wisconsin's history, we've only had two women representatives at all, ever. Tammy Baldwin was our first, and then Gwen Moore, who is still serving. She was elected in 2004. Um, those two women, I think, are incredible, very intelligent, strong, confident women that I really look up to. I know Tammy, now being our senator, is also a incredible asset and a resource, and I really respect the way that they have ran their campaigns and ran their political careers, being honest and open with the people that they represent. So,
As you reflect on what you might be doing well and what you would like to be doing better in your campaign in playing the
yes,
game of offense and defense, what's your goal today? Like right now, like, oh, I really want to remember to focus on this. What might that be?
I will say one of the things, I was the last candidate to declare my candidacy for the Democratic Party. So I'm a little bit, admittedly, behind the eight ball on fundraising. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is catch up. I admit one of the pieces of legislation that I would love to see is a lot of campaign finance reform. It seems very contradictory to me to go out and have politicians constantly asking for money and using money and the war chest as an indication of success, because that's what it is right now. That is the measure of if a candidate is successful, not their we're not looking at the qualifications, we're not looking at their experience and their background. We just keep looking at bank accounts. And it seems contradictory to me to say we want to make sure we're taking big money out of elections while also saying, give me more money.
Big,
um,
right.
but one of the things that I think is actually really important to me is making sure that every dime that is contributed to my campaign is used very respectfully. My job as a candidate is to make sure that I am stewarding every penny that is donated, to make sure that I am focusing those funds on things that are going to help people. Um, a lot of jokes has always been, the federal government has a ton of money and we can do whatever we want, and the golden shovel thing. I will say that might be true for some agencies, but it is not true for all of them. The USGS was one of those agencies where we had to make sure that we were very careful about every penny we spent. Everything is allocated very specifically for different reasons. And knowing that I needed to make sure that I was carefully spending America's tax dollars was so important to me. And that's what I want to continue to do as a candidate and as a politician, as an elected official. I want to make sure that every penny that is given to either in tax dollars or in campaign contributions is tracked, countable, and spent properly. We don't need to be buying golden shovels. We need to make sure that we're feeding families, paying for education, and helping people with their healthcare.
It's easy for me to assume the issues you named at the top are the result of testing and conversation with people of your district. Is that a true impression?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
The things that I'm hearing, number one is the affordability. We're drowning in expenses. Number two is accessibility, making sure that we have access to housing and healthcare. Another big topic in the sixth district is access to daycares and early childhood education. We are in a daycare desert, and making sure we have access to those is vital. Um, I'm also an advocate. Another one of the things I want to focus on is advocacy, making sure we're standing up for our civil rights and the rights of women and marginalized communities, because those communities are definitely not being heard. And then the last one is the accountability piece, making sure we're holding our elected officials accountable and making sure that we have free and fair elections. So those, yeah, those are my those are the results of talking to people, because those are the things that people care about the most right now.
I was really impressed that you tracked us down, right? We didn't
I
reach out
did.
to you, right? You found
I
us,
did.
you heard about us through the grapevine, and tech to, I could remind you of our major planks and purposes, and then I could get your opinion about those kind of things. Does that make sense?
I would love that.
Yeah, we the American Small Business League, we're in the business of exposing the fact that a couple things. Macro, big picture. We
Yes.
are a small business nation, 36 million small businesses, which represent 99.9% of all businesses in America, less than 500 employees. Okay. They're supposed to get 23% of all federal contract dollars every single year, something like $200 billion of investment. And every year, the SBA, who's responsible for monitoring that all federal agencies hit their small business contracting goals, every year the SBA says, we did it and we surpassed the goal, the federal government. How about a loan? Unfortunately, decades of our legal victories and congressional investigations and reports from the SBA's Inspector General have shown that billions of dollars of contracts that are supposed to go to small businesses go to big businesses, and the agencies report them as small business contracts to the SBA. And real small businesses, which aren't up to 500, we say a real small business is up to 100 employees because 98% of all businesses in America have less than 100 employees. Real small businesses really get maybe as low as 3 or 4% of those contract dollars. And
Yeah,
where does this hurt? It hurts us on Main Street because the big businesses that get almost all federal contracts basically create no new jobs when they get those contracts. They're already
right,
big. Whereas real small businesses would create a couple of million new jobs every year on top of the million or so jobs America creates every year. In other words, a huge economic boom and ongoing prosperity if we could get a congresswoman, a senator, an SBA administrator, or a president, or someone on the economic team in the White House to say, hey, guess what? We have found this outrage, scandal, problem to be true, and we're going to fix it. So I'm imploring you and everyone running for Congress and everybody in Congress. We're trying to do as much as we can to lobby the media and lobby Congress to shed light on this. Unfortunately, it's another scandal. And the American people need to hear about another scandal from Washington, D.C., like we need a hole in the
yes,
head. However, this is a great thread to pull because it's nonpartisan. This isn't a right or left or Republican or Democrat issue. This is just plain obey the law and do right by we, the people, the owners of these small businesses, the people who work in these small businesses, and all the small businesses who will never apply for a contract, the beauty salon, the garage door repairman, because when the local businesses get those contracts and do all that hiring, all small businesses will benefit. Everybody needs haircuts. Everybody needs their garage doors fixed. So
yep.
that's what we're laying at your feet. I'm going to ask you now for your opinion about all that, Amanda. But I give you the good news. I've got a lot more to say about our don't. I didn't have the right logo up. Our Don't Cheat Women project because
Yes.
of that whole thing. But just about what I've said so far. Talk back into that. Reflect about all that stuff, please.
I really appreciate that you're bringing up the government contracts. So a large piece of the work that I did with the USGS was purchasing. We didn't have a central purchasing agent. We all were able to purchase the supplies that we needed, especially considering a lot of our field work happened on the fly. One of the things I think that was unique is that we would go to businesses that are in the towns that we're working in. A lot of our gauges, the office that I work for focused on water quality and water quantity. So a lot of our folks would go to the small hardware store in the town and pick up the hammer that they needed or grab the drill that they needed. So they were constantly working with those small businesses in these little towns to make sure that, that was going on. But then when we were doing more government contracting and looking at, if I was doing purchasing through GSA, I always strived to find small businesses. And I would actually like double check that they were small businesses and not just have that small business check mark. Because that was one thing that actually frustrated me is I'd see a small business and I'd be like, well, wait a minute. They're a subsidiary of Amazon or they're a subsidiary of Walmart, whatever it was. So I really tried to do my best to make sure that I was supporting small business, women owned, and veteran owned small businesses every time I purchased. And in doing that, it was really unique because then instead of just saying, okay, click buy, I would get an email from the small business saying, thank you for your support. We really appreciate it. I know how hard it is to get those contracts and get even to be able to sell on GSA. So that was one of the things of like, nope, I'm going to work with the small businesses because they are the foundation. They're making sure that their employees get paid. So they're able to buy groceries and they're able to, as you said, get their hair cut and get their oil changed and take their car to the local mechanic. And so that was one thing that I really strive to do. And it's so important because they are, as you said, the foundation of our local economies. Um, I would absolutely be honored to work on the small business, work with the Small Business Administration, considering that the workforce that the Trump administration has cut the Small Business Administration's workforce by over 50%. I really, I really believe that that was a huge disservice to our local economies, to our local businesses, and to the people of America, because those are the folks that are feeding us. Those are the folks that are making sure that we have jobs and we're able to pay our bills. So
Yeah, the SBA, which is responsible for overseeing this contracting requirement, in addition to backing loans and doing other kind of training things to encourage and support small businesses, in large measure is the face of the cover up. On our homepage, ASBL.com, we say through bad policies, lax oversight, loopholes, and blatant fraud. The
yeah,
SBA says every year, "Oh, the federal government as a whole met the goal." My accusation, Amanda, of all this,
yeah.
the amount and the size of the contracts going to big businesses that are called small business contracts, is that new to you, or is that anything you saw or heard in your experience?
I've seen it. I've heard it. Because most of our purchasing had to go through the General Services Administration and the GSA contracts. That's where I started to get a little, the hair on the back of my neck stood up and said something's not right here, and that's why I would verify that. Is this really a small business? I go kind of off-site, say, do the search on the different business because I'm like, I don't know. Something seems a little fishy here when I started seeing.
How often did you find a problem or an anomaly there?
I would say it was at least 20% of the time, one in five. I would be like, wait, something's not right here. And that's where I would be like, oh, who owns this company? And it started to become very apparent that even though they had the small business flag, that I'm like, that's not a small business.
That's a
So
huge percentage. And in your 25 years, how many of those years were you involved in purchasing like that?
25.
Just think in 20 all those years, 20% of whatever those amounts were added up really went to big businesses instead of small businesses. And compared to all the agencies in the federal government, how big is the USGS?
Um, Employee wise, it was 10, well, it was 8,000 when I left, but that's shrunk substantially. So
No, but you said its
yeah.
budget was how much?
Our office was approximately 33 million. Um,
Okay.
Total budget, I don't know off the top of my head. It
But
was,
relatively small, you would say?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a small agency.
When you think of the Pentagon and you think of some of the others, and
Yes.
tragically, the SBA also has that tiny budget. Yes, last year it got cut, and the workforce got cut. And um, now I want to equip you with this because we think this will help you and anybody else win.
Yeah.
It's the goals of our Don't Cheat Women project, don'tcheatwomen.com. Simply this: raise from 5% to 15% the federal contract dollars that must go to women-owned small businesses. And
Love
then
it.
and then designate small businesses kind of officially as only up to 100 employees, and then also make sure that the SBA verifies that all contracts go to legitimate small businesses. But let's talk about women's businesses for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Most people aren't surprised to hear women are half the population. Makes sense. What many people don't know is that women own 40%, about 40% of all businesses in the United States, and they sell what the government buys. The
Yes.
government is the world's largest purchaser of goods and services. It buys everything under the sun. And yet, men get over 95% of all federal contracts. We think that's a violation of civil rights law right there. So, right there, those are reasons to rectify it. Dramatically, one would scream, "What the F? Like, how is this even possible? How is this
Yes.
tolerated?"
Yep.
But here's where it gets very important because men earn and save more than women, they dominate politics in America. First of
Yes.
all, they donate more to campaigns, so they've got more influence with all the winners. But it's
Hmm.
also easier for men to run for and win office. Listen to these facts. Up around 75% of all seats in the House, the Senate, state legislatures, president's cabinets are held by men. Almost that many governor positions, 90% of committee chair and party leadership positions. All men because they earn and save more than women. So everything that can empower women economically will allow them to compete and participate in the councils of government. The human race, we need everybody there advising our government. It's 2026, and women are not really close to political equality. So when one wraps one's head just around that, to raise from 5 to 15% the federal contract dollars that must go to women owned small businesses, it's not the whole economic solution, but it's a big part of it. But it
It's
would also
huge.
push from 23% to 33% the total federal contract dollars that would have to go to small businesses. Another million jobs getting created because here's a great factoid. In 2010, the chair of the Senate House Small Business Committee said for every 1% increase of federal contracts to small businesses, 100,000 jobs get created. So if women owned businesses get an extra 10% of the federal contract dollars, that should equate another million jobs. So if
Right.
small businesses got 23%, that's 2.3 million jobs getting created. If they got 33%, that's 3.3
3
million new
million.
jobs
Yes.
on top of the million or so that America more or less creates every single year. So that's why we're excited. We think this is a hot potato. We think that this is worthy of a campaign. Please road test it. Tell me how it's going. It's resonating. They
I,
care. Bruce, they don't understand it. How do I explain this more simply? I don't know, but start playing with it. It's only March. When's your primary?
my primary is August 11th, and then the general is November 3rd.
All right. Talk to me about this aspect of the women-owned businesses.
So women-owned business is so vital. I mean, even as a federal employee, I frequently had to work another job just to make sure that I'm paying my mortgage. And it was interesting. I what my very first job was at a bakery, and it was owned by a woman in my community growing up. And interestingly, like, I felt very cared for as a teenager working at a bakery. When I've been working for businesses that are woman owned, there is more care and attention put on the employees. Like, they're the and I don't say it just purely as a maternal instinct kind of thing. Like, they've actually legitimately cared about the employees. And I think that's one thing that translates into women owned businesses and the products that they create. I've seen frequently where if there's a woman owned business, the quality of product is much better and it will last longer. And it will probably be more affordable because we understand how hard it is to make sure that we are balancing every single dime of our family budget and also of our business budget. I have operated as a small business. I did craft sales and try to make additional money that way too. And it really was one of those trying to make sure that every item I created, everything I sold was made with as much attention to detail as I could. And I think this also translates into larger women-owned small businesses where they're caring for the employees, they're caring for their product, and they're making sure that the money that they're getting for their product is worth the product that the person is receiving. I think frequently quality is maybe overlooked on a larger scale if you've got a larger business because they're pumping out so much. The quality sometimes goes down just because they're chasing that dollar and they don't necessarily, they're going to make
Mhm.
1,000 widgets, and if 5 of them are bad, it's not a big deal. But if you're making 100 widgets, you're definitely going to make sure that all 100 of those are quality and um, worth the money that is being spent on it. And I see it's a unique perspective from women-owned businesses more frequently than other male-owned businesses.
Yeah. There's a couple things I want to talk about. I want you to start thinking about the next, the one or two things you definitely want to reiterate or bring up before we come in for a landing here. It's the reality of this war that we're in right now. You would have an impact as a representative in the House. And I'm warning you as a new friend, we don't know what tomorrow brings. We don't know how big and horribly this could escalate along the lines of a combination of World War II and the Great Depression, because our dollar is ready to bottom out anyway. It has been for years with the unsustainable national debt that we have. What do you say as a candidate about that?
I am disheartened that we attacked another country. My husband and I got married in 2004, and a week later, he was deployed to Iraq. He served in our military. He served with the Air Force for 20 years
Hmm.
as the on the Air National Guard. And so our marriage started out with him being in a war. Um, because I feel this so deeply and it's so personal to me, knowing that we are sending our men and women overseas to fight in a war that we shouldn't have started, that was not authorized by Congress, is completely unacceptable to me. I actually had a conversation with my representative over the weekend. So I talked to him on Sunday after we bombed the Iran on Friday, and he at that point had still not been briefed on the situation. Now this is over 36 hours later, and he basically was like, I don't know what the legal justification was, and I'm not sure it'll stand up, but I'm sure he had a reason. And I, as a congressperson, that's unacceptable to me. If that was me, I would not be sitting at a brat fry in rural Wisconsin. I would have been in DC asking for answers because that's not okay to me. Um, they're putting the lives of our service members, and we've already had casualties, and we haven't even like we shouldn't have been there in the first place. But the fact that we are, and there's no one answering to why this happened, and Congress is not holding them to account. Really, as a veteran's wife, it absolutely is abhorrent to me.
Thank you.
And I would not be, I'm not being quiet about it because it's unacceptable that Congress is not holding the administration to account.
Well, I totally agree. It's a violation of the Constitution. We've been at the mercy of the national security state, the military industrial complex for decades. I think FDR is the last president who went to Congress for a declaration of war. I might be wrong about that. I don't think so. We have we're speeding toward many cliffs. You have an incredible, historic, really, opportunity to even just run for office, and hopefully you win, and then your mind will be blown every day about what you learn and what the opportunities are and what the obstacles are. What would you share with me at your leisure in terms of kind of like a closing statement, reminder, anything, your website? Tell us everything.
Yes. So one thing I want to kind of close with is when I became a manager, when I became a leader in my office. Previously, I hadn't understand like why things were done, what we were doing, what we were not doing, and the reason why. Like, tell me why, and then I can understand and either support or be frustrated about the decision. So one of the things I promised myself and my employees when I became a manager is I'm not just going to tell you what we're doing, I'm going to tell you why we're doing it. And I think that's the piece we're missing. Um, like, why are we not holding the director or the secretary of our Justice Department to account? They're violating the federal law. Why are we not doing this? And if I don't have a good answer to why, I better be have that as my top priority to get the answer and make sure it's done. We need to be finding out why the administration bombed Iran or bombed, you know, a whole bunch of other places. Why are we starting wars in places that we shouldn't be starting wars? And I think the important thing is to make sure that there's the why,
Hmm.
because I can tell you, the sky is purple, but that doesn't matter unless I know why it's important to me, right? If I can tell you, okay, the sky is purple because the sun is setting, you're like, okay, I can put those two things together. But if I don't tell you why, it doesn't matter and it doesn't resonate with you individually. And I think that's the piece that we keep missing from our elected officials right now. We're doing this. I'm going to tell you it's good for you, but how is it good for me? Why do I need to know? So making sure we always are leading with the why is so important. Um, I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, Bruce, and speak with the American Small Business League. It's a group that holds, is dear to my heart. As you mentioned, I reached out to you because it is so important to make sure that we are continuing to support small businesses who really do form the foundation of our economy. And these are literally the kitchen table issues when we have so many people working for our small businesses. And with that, I really appreciate the opportunity and time to speak with you. If anyone would like more information, my website is Amanda Bell for the word for Congress.org. And I'm available for can reach out for comments or questions at info@amandabellforcongress.org. And you can reach out on my website as well.
Thank you, Amanda. I really enjoyed the emails you sent me, and then what I quickly found on your website. I encourage everybody to go there and just flesh out much, much more about all they learned today, hearing and watching you. Let's talk for a minute after I kill the recording. But I want to
Okay.
thank you very, very much for being here
Thank
today,
you so much.
and thank everybody for watching and listening.